Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. And so the man sits in the chair, as he has done for over 20 years. And the humans in the audience have an opportunity, with free choice, to believe or not believe. And there are those who won't. And they'll say it sounds just like the man. His corporeal body remains identical to the 3D seer. Some will say it's a trick, it's a fake, and walk away unchanged and convinced that these things are not for them, a circus show. And right next to them will be somebody who not only sees the change in the corporeal body, but is in the process of healing themselves accordingly through an entangled state with spirit, and will walk out of the room with years in their life extended. And that is the difference. Channeling is a portal. Call it a portable portal. A portal that moves around with the higher self of the individual who chooses to open it. We have discussed the old souls on this planet. Those who are beginning to strike the match and hold it high, those who are changing themselves. And they are also many portals, portable, walking around. And wherever they go, there are differences. And when they assemble, there are differences. And when then they split up to go to their places, there are massive changes around them. Like lighthouses on the rock, they make differences in their lives, in their families, in their workplaces. And all of that is a mystery to those who are not ready. There are so many interesting things that we could tell you about old souls, but we will say right now to this group in this room that the majority of you who sit here are old souls. Now that is defined as those human beings who have been on the planet lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, at least 1,000 years, some of you 10,000 and more. And we have made announcements about some of the attributes that old souls have. And I'll say it again so that you would hear it in this short message. Announcement number 1. I know who you are and I know what you've been through, and I don't mean this lifetime, although I know that as well. Spirit sits in your lap when you sit down. Spirit stands next to you when you stand up. Spirit runs beside you when you quicken. Spirit is in the vehicle when you travel. You're never alone. There is a group that you would call guide sets, whatever you want to name them, and you won't be right. Or multidimensional beings, some of them part of you, that always are there. And the energy of the Gaia grid on this planet is changing so greatly that the veil starts to lift, and those entities around you are able to now get to you easier, should you choose to look. And if you begin the process of asking, is there more? Can I really do this? Does this work, dear ones? This is the energy you have waited for it begins now. And your entire life you have swam upstream, light worker, and we know it. You've been beat up, and we know it. You've been cast out, and we know it. Some of your family members, I know who's here. And the disappointment on both sides, that your own family would turn their back on you, and we know who's here. Sometimes the love of the mother is absolute, but it's dichotomous with the love of her God. I know who's here. And if you go back a few lifetimes and a few hundred years, there are those of you who awakened with the knowledge you have today, the what if God was inside knowledge, and you were seen as a cult, cast out of the village, some of you burned at the stake. I know this. And you come into this lifetime expecting more of that, don't you? Well, some of you got a little of it. And what is the result of that? I will tell you. Light workers are timid. They don't have a lot of self-worth either. Because human beings tend to walk around them. Because they are unusual. And what if I told you, dear one, that is going to change? Oh, they're not going to accept the new age. It doesn't have the structure they like. There's no buildings, there's no rule set, there is no doctrine for them, there's no prophet. No, what they're going to do is accept you. When the masters walked the earth, what attributes did they have? Did they have a doctrine? No, they didn't. They only had themselves. And they taught about the love of God. There are stories that even the animals followed them around. Could they have had a field that was compassionate, so much so that when humans stepped into it, they felt better? They felt safe? And the answer is yes. And that is what's happening to you. That someone would step into your home or into your field or next to you at work. Even your children and their children will know. You're a better person. Something's changed. You're more comfortable. You're easy. You're safe. There's no judgment. You listen to them. There's only love. There's only compassion. There's no instructions. All you do is sit and be. And with other humans get in trouble and they have drama, they may be sitting in a chair next to you where you work and experience the same issues that you do, only you don't react and they do. And eventually they're going to turn to you and say, how do you do it? How do you stay even? How do you center in your core? How do you stay compassionate and loving when there's just idiots all around us? You see, I know who's here. And it's a good question, is it not? Be ready to answer it. And you don't have to give them a Kryon book. Tell them about you. Here's what I've discovered. I think that God is inside us. And I have claimed that. And it's made a big difference. And now I'm going to live longer. I'm relaxing. I don't have anxiety. My blood pressure is down. Because I know I'm loved. And all these things around me don't touch me anymore. Are you beginning to feel what's in this room, dear ones? Could this be real? Have you come in doubt? What if this was real? Channeling has always been on the planet. There are no words of God on the planet. Scriptures were not written by God. They were written by humans. Think about it. Some of them sitting in a chair, like this one, with a pen in their hand instead of a microphone. And the words that they would scribe on parchment became the Holy Scriptures. That's channeling. Anointed as they were with the spirit of a mini portal to the higher self, giving informations of love from source. It was seen by human beings as divine, as beautiful, as real, and published accordingly. This is not new. There's even a chair in the Vatican, a relic, where something happens called ex cathedra. And the Pope sits there and everything he says is infallible. Even the Pope knows there must be a connection to source. For there is new information. Even the Pope knows. Religions who say you cannot talk to God, even they know that at least one of them must. Known by humanity, it is in so many different forms. Channeling. Not only appropriate, divine, blessed. And you're going to see more of it. And it's not going to be like this. One to many. You're going to start seeing it one to one. When the higher self of you starts to open and you start getting the thoughts that you say are intuitive, you're making them up, and you start to understand this is the communication you've asked for. Don't throw away that which is intuitive. Put it instead in a sacred place and look at it. Don't put a clock on it. Don't give instructions and then manifest immediately. Get instructions and put them and wait for the synchronicity that manifests them by itself. All of these things we have taught in the past. Meanwhile, the doubter sits. Could it be real? So I have an invitation for those who are here perhaps for the first time and are wondering if it's the man or if it's Kryon. You're not going to know as long as the shield is there. If the shield of doubt is there, if the layers of cynicism are there, you'll always be in 3D and it will always be a fake. And so I'm going to ask you to remove the shield for the day. And before you get up from the chair tonight, you can put it all back. But only for a few hours, perhaps you would be open to things that you not normally are open to. For there's no dark energy here which will be transmitted to you. The love of God does not work in that fashion. You're open to sense energies for the first time, and you ask the question, dear God, show me. For if this is real, I need to know it. And then with your free choice, you may move on your way. Perhaps we have planted a seed that will grow, a seed that is hope, beyond what you thought might be possible with a human being. I tell you, humanity is starting to capture it all by themselves, to feel the Creator inside, to adjust, to become softer. You're going to see battles that are odd. The dark energy thrashing against itself. You're going to see dark energy organizations begin to try to apply themselves, to start up, only to have the public say, we're not interested. You're going to see terrorist groups start to try to incorporate yet again and recruit, and you're going to find their population saying, I'm not interested. And it'll be shocking. For the very paradigm that created them in the first place will change. And they're going to start to see that which is the true creative energy. The compassionate mother and the love of God, which abhors war. We would not say these things if they were not so. Take these things in. Use your spiritual logic and make up your minds. I'll be back. And so it is.
Quite a day, huh? The energy in the room is so very different than 12 o'clock. So, come on home to your body now. Take a few deep breaths with me. Inhale. Exhale. And again. And this time, inhale, I, and exhale, am. And you could just do that silently a few times. Inhale, I am. And just let your body gather itself into your skin. Let your eyes soften, your shoulders, your physical connect to your spiritual. And allow your awareness, like a lighthouse beacon, to just touch other lights around you in passing and say hello. And feel the vibration of the lights that each of you are, each individual, yet each is light. Your signature, your soul essence. And as you open to receive the love and the guidance of the Kryon energy, let it be from that place of essence and light.
Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. It is a safe place. A place where there are no energies that would be inappropriate that would come before you. Every single human in the room is known. And there is an attitude of spirit that presents itself to the individual. An attitude of thanks. An attitude of love. My partner sits on a stage so that in 3 dimensions you may see him. Spirit is not on a stage. Spirit is with you. And so the words that I have this day are being spoken within you, simultaneous with those pieces and the parts of you which are quantum. And it's personal, all of it. The information this evening will be that which is informative. And tomorrow, energetic. And so this is about the way things work. This is about energies and information and physics and all for you. But before we begin, we say this: have you figured out yet why we're even here? Over 20 years ago, my partner sat in a chair and asked this question: what for? Why me? Why now? And we put before him the same thing I will put before you. Old souls are on this planet on purpose as a family. There is no accident that you are here. You sit in the chair today, some of you only recently realizing you were coming to the meeting. I know who's here. Perhaps to feel the energy of this day and this evening, and perhaps even tomorrow. And perhaps for the first time you will feel as part of this collective. less individual and more part of the plan of why you agreed to be here. Even your parents agreed with you before they came in to allow for you to be born. Your agreement with them was not to be appreciated, liked, even loved. It was to be born. And on the other side of the veil, they knew it and you knew it, and you're here because of it. They knew that it was not their time, but it would be yours. They saw the potentials just as Spirit did of what might take place in 2012, and you're here as proof. The plan is bigger than you think. I would like to talk about grids. I'm going to give you a channel, not an endurance channel, one that is about the 3 grids. It's not a summary, for there's always new information, but it's the first time we put these things together in this way for an entire channeling session. I want to explain them to you. I want you to think about them. I want you to start putting together these things and understanding everything around you exists for you. You don't walk around surviving as a victim in a world that is filled with other victims, at the beck and the call of nature and the forces of politics. That's not who you are. You're the chosen ones. The ones we knew who would come here, old soul, and start planting the seeds of light and those things called nature and politics. Oh, you live with them, but you're not really part of them. Well, they're in 3D and they are part of the culture that you live in and perhaps the world that you think you are in. But all of them are 3D. And the grids are not. Let me introduce you to real reality. The bigger picture, the things that are invisible, the things you cannot see but are there energetically. We spoke of 3 grids on the planet. There are more, but the 3 major ones that we teach about, the magnetic grid, this was the first that you heard of. I am Kryon, the magnetic master. You'll learn today why. The second one we talked about was the crystalline grid. We explained what it did, why it was there. We're going to do more today. And the third grid is Gaia, the grid of life. And so I'm going to give them to you and explain them in ways you perhaps have not heard before. And we're going to start the last first. The grid which is Gaia, one of the 3. We use the 3 constantly, for this is a catalytic number. That is to say, it has energy beyond itself. When the catalyst, whether it is a number or a chemical, is combined with other numbers or chemicals, they become greater than the source. We have spoken of the third language. That means a language which is higher and above the one you're hearing in 3D. You'll see the 3s everywhere. Gaia, the crystalline, and the magnetics are 3 in 1. There is not one which is higher or lower than the other or takes precedent from the other. They exist in a soup, the 3 in 1. But I take them apart for your examination, but I tell you they're interactive. You cannot separate them. One involves in the other, is entangled with the other. The Gaia grid is the grid of life. It is the Akash. Gaia holds the Akash inside her. Life holds the Akash inside it. Therefore, any life on Gaia has its own Akash record. Yours is in your DNA. It is also in a cave of creation, which is in Gaia. The grid of Gaia is all about life on the planet of all kinds. You might even say that Gaia is that which sees and is responsible for regulating that which is coming and going to the planet. You pass through the Gaia grid, coming and going. Gaia is the closest grid you have to you. It is the first thing that the indigenous see, worship, know about. The indigenous are overwhelmed with the study and the worship of their ancestors, with life. That's Gaia. They know about that which is directional, the east, the west, the south, the north. They have ceremonies, lines of influence. That's Gaia. They gave energy to the growth of the crops, life. That's Gaia. And so Gaia becomes the one that you see first. You may even call it Mother Nature. But upon Gaia, there are some other things that you should know. Interwoven in what we call the crystalline and the magnetics, there are portals. Energies which sit upon, seemingly, Gaia, for they're on the land. And you might say that they are a Gaia attribute. A portal here, a portal there. And in a moment I'll show you why they're not. They belong to another grid. Now let me tell you about the consciousness of Gaia. The actual consciousness of Gaia, alive, of the earth, is all about humanity. 4 billion years ago, if you ask Gaia, what is going on? Gaia would say, we're preparing for humans. 1 billion years ago, as the earth cools, and you would ask Gaia, what is going on? She would say, we're preparing for humans. 50 million years ago, if you ask Gaia, what is going on? She would say, it's imminent. They will be arriving shortly. A few thousand years ago, she would say, and now they're here. Again, I want to present a puzzle to you. It was Gaia who regulated the timing of humanity, responsible for when you showed up. I didn't say evolution, did I? How long ago was it that you had large mammals on the earth, and how many humans were around building cities at that time? Doesn't it seem odd to you that it took 4 billion years for you to arrive? Could it be that there was a grander plan and that Gaia knew something, being connected as she is to spirit? And the answer is yes. Could it be that humanity is the new kid on the block in the universe? And the answer is yes. With the age of the universe and the age of your galaxy, did it ever occur to you that there might be civilizations as grand as yours, as intelligent as yours, that are millions of years old? There should be, and there is. You were delayed on purpose. Did you know that there were at least 4 starts of life on the planet? Gaia put them all to rest. The final one, it got photosynthesis. The other ones didn't. Talk to a biologist about this. All of these things should add up to the solving of a puzzle that would say, why now? Why did it take so long when the earth could have supported humanity millions of years ago? Why now? There were two reasons. The first was to let your solar system settle down. That is to say, all of the rocks that are flying around would finally find their orbits and stop plowing into you. Because that wouldn't serve humanity at all, any more than it served the dinosaurs. Do you see what I'm saying? The evolution of mankind was presented exactly when it should have been, and aligned exactly when the Pleiadians would visit. Ready you were, not too advanced, not too shallow, just right. And that was the second reason. For the planet has been seeded, and this day you look and you know why. The planet is in shifts. It's going to change, dear ones. 2 generations from now, you're going to look back and something will occur to you. There hasn't been a world war. In fact, there hasn't been a big war of any kind. And you'll wonder what happened, and you'll be glad for it, but you won't have figured it out. Consciousness shift is at hand. We told you 20 years ago it would be. It's here. You're just beginning to see it. This earth is starting to repair itself. Slow it will be. Generations must come and go. Those who hate must leave. And they will. Through natural causes. Eventually replaced by those who will not hate. And sometimes that's the only solution. For there will be humans in groups who are very stubborn about this and will claim the old energy right to the end. Gaia. This is what Gaia has done for you. Orchestrated the timing of humanity. Put life on the planet for you to eat. Going through the cycle right now so that it will be refreshed so you can continue that. This is the one you see every day. Can you see it as alive? In your sleep, could you say, thank you, Gaia, for being with me, for loving me? And you'd be accurate and true. There is a consciousness of this planet. The ancestors knew it. You cannot ignore it. And it exists for you. The crystalline grid is the most difficult to explain. It is a metaphoric grid. You cannot see it. Now, you cannot see the Gaia grid either, but you can see Gaia. You can honor the plants, the trees, the animals, the oceans, the seas that are inland. You can marvel at the beauty. The crystalline sits there invisible doing its job, and it's profound. You can feel it, but you can't see it. We have said crystalline grid. This is a metaphor. What is it that you know about substances crystalline? The only rock, the part of the earth, which is Gaia, on the planet that can hold a vibration is crystal. So we have called this the crystalline grid so that you would have an inkling of what it does. It holds vibration. It does more than that. It remembers. Here's a system that I have talked about before, but perhaps not in this complexity. Everything you do, old soul, is recorded on the crystalline grid. It remembers your life. Every footstep is recorded. And it's a non-linear process. We spoke of this just recently in another continent. That is to say that the crystalline grid does not remember things equally. There are certain things it remembers with, shall we say, greater strength than not. There are battlefields close by. And you can go stand in them, and those of you who feel things will say, This was a place of death. Much happened here. Let me ask you, who are you talking to? It's the crystalline. Up to this point in your human existence, the crystalline grid has remembered that which is war, that which was healing, and that which was compassion in fairly equal ways. And you can go to places on the planet and feel the mother energy. That's the crystalline. Something happened there. You can go to places on the planet that are battlefields and feel that. On this crystalline area where you are now, there wasn't really much that happened. Only one civilization. Not much. It's fresher. If you go to Europe, you can stand where there are as many as 30 to 40 civilizations, battles, death in the millions. It's hard to channel there, dear ones. Ask my partner. Because the energy is not commensurate with a portal that opens as fully as it needs to for channeling. This is the crystalline at its best. What humans did, it remembers. Now I would like to tell you some things about the crystalline grid that we have not talked about much. Number one, if it's where human did things, that means most of the crystalline remembrance is on the land. Some things took place that were later covered by water, and these are felt still while on the water. But over 80% of all crystalline remembrances are on land. So you're not discovering a lot of portals on the water. Now you may have things you wonder about, such as the Bermuda Triangle, which is water. It has nothing to do with the crystalline grid. We haven't gotten there yet. That's magnetics. No, we are talking about what you feel when you stand in certain places, dear one, where the old soul resounds with the land. That's the crystalline that they're resounding with. We have told you that the crystalline grid is responsible for what you say are ghosts. And as proof of this, we tell you that you can interview someone who is passed over, because that which is their essence is still on the crystalline grid. If you have a seance and call on Aunt Martha, she'll be there. But only the Aunt Martha's tape plays. That is to say, that which was Aunt Martha on the earth stays, not where she is now. Let me give you an example. Aunt Martha, how are you? Fine. How are you? Fine. Aunt Martha, where is the treasure buried? 3 feet from the left of the oak tree. And she'll be right. Aunt Martha, what's it like on the other side of the veil? Fine, thank you. What's your day like over there? We love each other. Fine, thank you. You won't get any details because she's not there. Aunt Martha is only echoing what she was being taught by her church. You see what I'm saying? What is it the ghosts do? Over and over, they play a tape. Something happened in a house, they come down a stairway. It happens every night. You go back and they come down a stairway. And you go back and they come down a stairway. The crystalline grid is the ultimate tape player. It'll play it and play it and play it. And where there were profundities, it'll play it stronger. So strong that you can actually measure it with magnetics, with temperature, because it's that real. It does not represent entities from the other side or entities who are trapped. It is simply a recording. a recording in energy. And some can see it happen repeatedly over and over. This is the crystalline. Now let me tell you what's happening. As the earth shifts its energy, as Gaia also shifts her energy, as the Kundalini moves southward, it recalibrates all the grids. Suddenly, this grid that was crystalline, that remembers things equally, will be nonlinear. And that is to say, suddenly the things that were, as you would say, darker, will not be as remembered keenly as the things which are lighter. Now, my partner, you didn't do a very good job with that, so I'm going to ask you to back up and try again. The crystalline grid is being aligned for compassion. Where there is compassion, there will be energy that everyone can feel. Where there is darkness and war and death, there will be less energy than ever before. You'll be able to walk over places that used to disturb you before, and the crystalline grid will be quiet. And you'll go to places where there were healings and it'll soar. Where there's appreciation for God and love, there will be portals. Even the smallest healing will be noticed grandly. The realignment of the grid is the alignment to the mother energy. We call it Mother Earth. It's about time it responded accordingly. So the remembrance factor of the physics of the crystalline is changing. And what that's going to do is that there's going to be less hatred remembrance to fuel the fires of those who sit in histories of hatred. It's not going to affect them as much. And the next generation in certain places on this earth are simply not going to feel it. And they're not going to cooperate anymore. With hate and war. And the religious belief systems of this planet are going to soften. You're going to see, even in the West, a realignment of what you call Catholicism. Within 1 to 2 generations, this church will change. And the love of Christ will be paramount, as it should be. But the rules around the old energy will start to crumble. Church is not going away, dear ones. It doesn't have to go away, dear ones. Do not judge what you think is correct and not correct on this planet for any other human being but yourself. For some need the organization where they go and report in a linear fashion and feel the love of God, where they sing the songs and have the healings that you can have here. And they are comfortable with this, and they are joiners. And there's no thing wrong with that. So if you can visualize something for this grand church, visualize purity, appropriateness, and change. And they will have a chance to do that because the crystalline of remembrance is starting to move. When human beings live on the crystalline grid in certain places, it feeds them every day with what has taken place there. Can you see what that might do? If the grid starts to remember things more profound that are beautiful than ugly, that's a recalibration even of the grid. There is no symmetry on the crystalline grid. Humans don't work in symmetrical ways. So if you start drawing lines around these places, you're not going to find that they spell something. There's not going to be a mystery solved. No puzzle from one to the other. It's what humans did in certain places that create the patterning of the grid. And now we get to the magnetic. The magnetic grid, if you could say, what is it about? It is communications. Not all planets have a magnetic field. It requires planets that have not cooled yet completely to have a magnetic field. Not all magnetic fields have poles which are north and south. So it's not the same everywhere. Yours is carefully designed. We've told you some anomalies about the magnetic field that you should know. We have cited things about magnetics that you should know. The first and foremost is that it is necessary for life. If you change the magnetics of the planet too much, life will change. If you decide to go to another planet on a very long voyage, you must take the magnetic field with you. You must simulate as much as possible what you have here and surround yourself with it so your biology thinks it's the same. There will be tests of this and you'll see. But that's not what it's for. You get into physics, dear ones, and there are not all those interested in physics, but let me tell you something. This planet is being communicated with constantly and not by necessarily others out there like you. We are talking about energies of the galaxy. We're talking about physics with an attitude. We're talking about things that are magnetic and beyond. Quantum things that literally speak to this planet as though the galaxy were alive, speaking to where you are and what you're doing. If you've noticed carefully, and perhaps you haven't even looked, but the scientists know there's something dealing with magnetics that's new and is happening in your solar system that was never there before. Even the solar system is beginning to become recalibrated. We told you that. The sun is involved greatly. It has something called the heliosphere, the magnetic field of the sun, energy which is blasted out constantly, has another name, the solar wind, which quantumly measures the planet's fulcrum energy. That is to say, the planets around the sun push and pull the sun's core through what you would say is gravity. The sun, being the mother of the solar system, is very in tune where all the planets are, for they constantly pull upon the sun. This is a quantum patterning of the sun that is then transmitted to the earth through the solar wind, intercepted by the magnetic field, and transferred to you. And you have a name for it. Astrology. It starts to explain birth signs. It also starts to explain that no matter how you work the astrology, even backwards, even the Vedic, it's the same thing. And it's going to give you the same answers, for it's the same patterns, just a little upside down. The magnetic grid is a communicator. Oh, but there's more. So the solar system talks to you. You are literally patterned by it through the sun in your DNA. There are times on the planet that affect human consciousness. Full moons, void moons, retrogrades. Measurable they are in society by how much crime there is. How do you explain that? It's about consciousness. It comes and goes like the tide. Basically, through what the solar system does, all through the magnetic grid. The magnetic grid of the planet is like an antenna that is universal. But there's more. You need magnetics for entanglement. Now, if you were not part of the lecture earlier today, you may not know what that is. It's a quantum connection that is beyond the 3 dimensions. And you need magnetics to create it. And so the magnetic fields becomes part of an entanglement engine from a very far away place. I'll give you two new things in physics. One, I have spoken of before, so it doesn't get included in the two new ones. I'll start with this one. There's two missing laws of physics you will discover. There are four now, there should be six. The two laws of physics which are missing is a strong and weak multidimensional state or force. They work much like that in current physics, only quantumly. And it starts to explain things that you have not been able to understand or figure out in 3D. Two new things. Number one. In astronomy, those who look at the galaxies, including this one, don't understand why the stars move around the middle the way they do. Like they're pasted on a plate. Like a bicycle wheel whose spokes never move except together. Because they're hardwired to the rim. That's the way the galaxy moves. Around the middle. That's not Newtonian, if you noticed. It doesn't have anything to do with mass, if you've noticed. And it is not three-dimensional physics, if you've noticed. And every spiral galaxy does it. If you look at Andromeda, it does it. If you look at the Milky Way, it does it. And I'll tell you why. Because you are entangled with the middle. That is to say, the middle of the galaxy contains something you have called the potential of a singularity. It is not a black hole per se. It is a quantum event. It is a push-pull energy. You call it a black hole, we call it the twins. There's a push-pull quantum energy there, a strong and weak force. Physicists, listen to this channel. Perhaps this will lead to discovery of ideas. This galaxy is entangled. That is to say, whatever is happening in the middle is so strong with you, it rotates and you rotate with it. And what could it be in the middle? There's a portal there. And that's as far as we're going to go. A portal there. A grand one. It is not where you meet God. It's something grander than that. Perhaps even there is a communication with something else. That was number one. Number two, is it interesting that astronomers have to work the puzzle backwards to tell you that in order for the Big Bang to have happened, there has to be missing energy. And instead of saying there's missing energy, they say there has to be matter involved. And that matter, of course, is invisible and it's dark. And so in other words, for things to happen the way they've happened, if you work the puzzle backwards, you will discover the only simulation that makes any sense is when you add in a whole bunch of things you don't understand. And you call it dark matter. Well, it isn't matter at all, dear ones, it's quantum energy. Quantum energy is not definable with three-dimensional attributes. And so we will just say it's quantum energy that pushes and pulls on the three-dimensional part. There is no such thing as dark matter. This is the missing puzzle. Physicists and astronomers, when you start understanding the push and the pull that created the universe, that is part of this galaxy, you will see the strong and the weak multidimensional force that explains it all. It'll fall into the puzzle and the formulas will work. And then you will see the truth of it. Almost everything you're looking at is quantum. Not the small, but the very large. And then I beg you, biologists, to start looking inside. For as it is in the small and the large, it is in the human being. and you will start to see the miracle of quantum DNA. These are the 3 grids. The magnetic grid of your planet communicates with you constantly. And now, just before I go, I'll talk about your parents. No, not the ones you think. There's Pleiadians in the room. And they're invisible. There's more and more of them all the time, and they're coming out of the portals that are being released in 2012. Pleiadians don't have to have spaceships to get here. They're entangled with you, and always have been, because they're part of the universe. I'm giving you some information we have never described before. If you're in an entangled state, dear one, and you understand multidimensional, and you understand multidimensional physics, you're going to start understanding that teleportation is not something that is science fiction. Anything in an entangled state is part of itself. It can be in 2 places at the same time. There's Pleiadians in the room. You think they're here. How do you define here? Is God here? And if God is here, does that mean he's missing somewhere else? No. Is God in your house right now? Watching over your loved ones if they're there? And the answer is yes. Is God here in this room with you right now? And the answer is yes. How can God be in 2 places at the same time? There's Pleiadians here. Thousands of years ago, they knew how to do this. It's not simply high science. It's part of spiritual awareness. The more spiritual aware this earth becomes, the higher scientifics it'll be given, and the more that it'll understand about peace. Those are your parents. The Pleiadians watch over this place. There's a mountain in California, they're pouring out of it. You call it Shasta. There's a time capsule there, which is not really a time capsule at all. It's simply a portal for the Pleiadians. You stand on that mountain, you can hear him, you can see him. Lights flash. They come and they go. I want to tell you something. All in appropriateness and love, they are seeing what you're doing. They realize you made it. There's going to be a lot of activity on this planet. They're part of the magnetic grid. Communications, that's how they do it. If your Earth did not have the grid that Gaia put here, through the molten center of the Earth that still moves and creates the engine of magnetics, they would never be able to have come. If you did not have the crystalline, there would be no remembrance. You would have no help. And this is what is starting to occur. For the light worker is starting to get help. And that's coming from the crystalline. Together they represent something that we have taught now for 20 years. The earth is changing. Consciousness is shifting. And the old souls are awakening. Blessed is the human being who starts to put this together and understand that they are here not by accident, but for a reason. Lighthouses each go from this place differently than you came, holding energies that you didn't have before you came, and live longer because of it. I am Kryon, in love with humanity. In love with humanity. And so it is.
I would like to invite you to close your eyes, and we're going to be sending compassionate action to our future self. Question: do you deserve to receive compassionate action? Perhaps if you hesitated to answer yes, sending compassionate action to your future self will help you soften your answer and open your heart to be able to receive self-compassion and self-love from yourself. And so I want you to imagine a glowing ball, and you're going to place within this glowing ball the energy of compassion, of self, the energy of love, the energy of benevolence and kindness. And we're going to just gently have that ball come up out of our hands and into the field. It's being placed up into the field so that sometime in the future, from this linear 3D moment now, that beautiful golden ball of compassion, love and benevolence is going to descend upon us from the field. And it's going to just gently descend in a way where you will feel it, and you'll know when you face a future situation that causes you to have worry or concern, that is the invitation to receive this golden ball of compassion so it can enter into your heart and flood your cellular structure with a sense of peace, tranquility and calmness that will allow you to send that wave forward into this very situation that is causing you fear, worry and anxiety. And so with that intent that we've already created for our future self, to have self-compassion, there is nothing further to do. The relaxation that now comes as we recognize we're in a safe place, that we are known by Spirit, we are loved by Spirit, and we have a message that Kryon wishes to communicate to us now.
Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. You talk about the future, or perhaps the future self. Let's go back in time. Not a lot, just a little. And talk about that which took place in what we call the precession of the equinoxes, or more accurately, the middle of the precession of equinoxes, 2012, the end of that year. In astronomy, that was the place of its center wobble. And that was targeted as the time of new calendars by the indigenous. It was also the time we told you a shift was coming. Channeling for the last 8 years has been get ready for the shift. We are in the shift. There's more to come. One channeling, especially, and in appropriateness, a teaching of my partner, was all about how you deal with change in the shift. Now, most of you felt that this new energy was coming and it would be very slow. And in this, you would have a chance to see a new normal. And we used the words new normal over and over long before they were on your news. So we were ready for something. And that would be some kind of thing that you would create as human beings that would cause a shift then to be more radical for you than you expected. COVID was right on time, you might say, For now you are indeed in something that is rewriting your normal. Now here is the subject of this channel. The light worker reaction to the shift. Light workers' reaction to the shift. How were you doing up until COVID? Were you ready for it? Were you practicing any kind of new energy? Were you changing your lives in any way? Now, things were already starting to change in consciousness. You had a new pope. You had the Me Too movement. You had all manner of things that were starting a paradigm of the past. You see that. It was already in progress. And some of you were saying, well, this is the new normal, and we're getting ready for a higher consciousness on this planet. And that higher consciousness would slowly then bring us into what has been described as a high consciousness for humanity. And then you got COVID. Now, where am I going with this? I'm going to ask you, Lightworker, pointedly, how you're doing with that which is the shift. How are you doing with the new normal? Right now, it continues as I channel this. We are in a month in 2022 where you still have this planet dealing with that which is demonstrations, unhappiness, and a polarized population of those that disagree and agree. What the governments are doing, and it's universal. There has never been anything like this that affected the entire planet. There have been governments that did things, and countries who then reacted. There have been demonstrations all along, forever, really. But this is the first time you have seen a world problem. Dear ones, the shift is a world issue. Are you beginning to see how this is right on time? The planet is right now where it has to make decisions, but in the process of making decisions, there is polarity. That polarity is who is right, who is wrong, especially the mandates and the virus and all. And you may say, well, I have my opinion, but they are wrong over there. They're not doing it right, and they're perhaps endangering others or not, and you may go back and forth. Let me ask you, can you look at the ones you don't agree with and say, they are also light workers and I love them dearly? Or not? How are you doing, light worker, with the shift? These things that are being presented right now on this planet are truly the litmus test of a light worker. And rather than being caught up in all that it is or is not, the right or the wrong, or the inconvenience or the not inconvenience, this is the time, dear ones, for you to start taking action that only light workers know how to do. My partner said it earlier, even on this program. Now, before this ever took place, now you know that your compassion and your love is an energy that can be targeted to other places. It's energy. Your consciousness, that is how you think, is actually creating a patterned, why do we call it a patterned missile that has a patterning of love or compassion that can literally be sent someplace. And when it gets there, it explodes in love and in compassion, with hearts coming all out of it, and it falls there and lands gently, perhaps, upon others who need that. What a visualization. What a visualization. That you would be able to target compassion and love. Another. Maybe it's across the street. Maybe it's across the room. Did you think about that? The next time you feel that perhaps you're getting excited about what you believe, or perhaps angry about the fact that others don't believe what you believe, What are you going to do there? Are you going to simply stew in your own opinion? Or perhaps, you'd have the maturity and the wisdom, and perhaps even the mastery, to include with all that is a love missile. No better way of saying it, where you're targeting a compassion and love and sending it over, perhaps across the room, perhaps across the table, to someone who may not agree with you at all. And it doesn't change their mind or change your mind, but it says, I am kind, what I feel, you might say. I might not agree, but I am kind in my countenance of all of this. I know how to be kind to those I disagree with. And I'll tell you what happens when you are. They feel it. How could they not? You just sent them a compassion love missile. They do feel it. And that's the other part of this equation. They're going to send a love missile back. This is the way it works. This is the way it works. Now, we have talked about this even in healing, that when you start a process of the ability to heal someone else, this comes back at you. There is a reciprocal. There's always a yin and yang. Physics operates in pairs. All energy of physics operates in pairs. And so does healing. And so does compassion. And so does love, because it's energy. So the more in a certain way, you may not have it verbalized back to you, but I'll tell you that the consciousness of the other knows what you're doing. Knows what you're doing. And you're doing it in love. How are you doing so far, dear ones, dear light worker? Because this is the change. This is the new normal. It's here. You might say, well, is it always going to be this way? Of course not. These are the tests. And they're not the tests of a virus. And they're not the tests of your health. These are the tests of your consciousness. Are you going to get through this? And you can look backwards and say, I did it with wisdom as best I could. I did it with whatever I could say is my mastery. I did it with kindness, and I did it with love. Or you're going to look backwards and say, I knew they were wrong. You look backwards in anger and say, well, I'm glad we got through that. It hasn't reached its climax yet, and it will, and you'll know when it does. Meanwhile, you have a wonderful set of opportunities. Now, for those who are listening and perhaps visualizing and perhaps even seeing this in the future, and this is now old news, you're going to have something too. You'll always have something to test you into whether you're going to use your mastery and your light or you're not. Dear ones, the more light workers are able to do this, the faster the consciousness of this planet will raise to the point where you don't have to practice anymore. It's just automatic. That you will look for kindness in others as the litmus test to see if you want to, or you want to employ them perhaps, or you want to be your partner perhaps in anything. You will look for mastery and kindness and maturity. And it won't matter what they believe. There'll always be a diversion from what you think you believe to somebody else. A discrepancy, perhaps, in your perception and their perception. There'll always be that. That's human nature. It's how you treat it. It's where mastery starts to come in. How you doing? These are the testing times, dear ones. This is where a light worker shows they're a light worker. These are the times for more compassion, kindness, and love than in the last 8 years, in the last 7 years, in the last 6 years. This is the time. How you doing? I am crying in love with all of you.
Halloldu. Gece de. Yok. Ben bunu kaldım. Boyunca sürekli ağlıyor. Ali gözüne çok sıkıntı oldu. Mesela Ali'yi göstermek. Ha, daha önce gösterilmiyor.